My name is Amber Mathwig. I work at a UPS hub in Minnesota. I load trucks in the morning before they can head out and do their routes every day. And I have been a proud member of Local 638 for the last 9 months.
My name is Rikki Schreiner. I have been employed at a UPS facility since September of 1999. Yes, I am old. I originally started working there because of the Earn and Learn program, and then I got what was called the golden handcuffs, and it's hard to give up a full-time job making that kind of money right off the bat, and so I've stayed.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network, produced by Jules Taylor, and made possible by the support of listeners like you. Working People is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. So if you're hungry for more worker and labor-focused shows like ours, follow the link in the show notes and go check out the other great shows in our network. And please support the work that we are doing here at Working People so we can keep growing and keep bringing y'all more important conversations with our fellow workers every week. You can support us by leaving positive reviews of the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That really helps. And of course, you can share these episodes on your social media and share them around with your coworkers, your friends, and your family members. And of course, the single best thing you can do to support our work is become a paid monthly subscriber on Patreon for just $5 a month. If you subscribe for $10 a month, you'll also get a print subscription to the amazing In These Times magazine, and you will also unlock all of the great bonus episodes that we've published over the past 6 seasons of the show. All you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/workingpeople. That's patreon.com/workingpeople. Smash the subscribe button, and you will officially be a patron. And thank you so much to everyone who is already supporting us over there on Patreon. My name is Maximilian Alvarez, and I am very, very excited to be on the call with Amber and Rikki today. You guys know we are in the midst of an intense and intensifying contract fight between the International Brotherhood of Teamsters and the nearly 350,000 members working at UPS across the United States and United Parcel Service. And we are recording this episode of the podcast on Monday, July 10th. It's going to come out middle of the month of July. And, you know, this is going to be our last big UPS-focused podcast before the deadline of the, you know, when the current contract expires at the end of the month. As you guys know from our previous episodes, we recently published a great interview that I got to do with the great Sean Orr, shop steward and UPSer down in Chicago. You guys heard the on-the-ground episode that we did from Boston a couple months ago, where Sean O'Brien and the IBT leadership were holding a rally, to get members amped up about the current contract fight. And of course, I'm sure everyone listening to this also listens to our friends and comrades over at the Upsurge podcast. They've been doing great work covering this contract fight more extensively than anyone, putting it in context, showing how this contract fight connects to the last major strike at UPS in 1997, what it means for the labor movement, for the Teamsters, and for all of us, right? So we've been doing our best to cover as many bases for y'all as we can, and we are going to do more over at The Real News, especially as we get closer to the end of the month when the current contract is set to expire. People are currently expecting that if a deal is not reached between UPS and the Teamsters, as Teamsters have been saying, picket lines will go up on August 1st. So that is where things currently stand now. Last update that we heard from last week is that negotiations, quote unquote, collapsed between the Teamsters and UPS. Currently, both sides are pointing fingers at each other and saying that they're responsible for the talks collapsing. So you guys can do with that what you will. Again, I think we can kind of read between the lines and figure out, who's responsible for the contract talks collapsing. But we will, again, try to include as many up-to-date links in the show notes for you guys so that you can read up on this as well. And we will be posting updates throughout the month from our social media, on Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth. But yeah, like I said, as far as the podcast is concerned, this is our last big pre-strike episode, and I could not be more grateful to Amber and Rikki for making time to hop on the show and sort of talk us through what's going on right now and like where things stand from their vantage points. Before we get there, though, I really, really want to get listeners more acquainted with you both. Amber, of course, like we've had the honor of having on the show before with a great episode that we did in the past about working class folks in the military. If you haven't listened to that episode, you absolutely should. I think it's one of the best ones that we've done. Really informative, really, really great conversation. Amber, as always, was excellent on that podcast. But now Amber is working at UPS, right? And I know got a lot of thoughts about the current contract fight. So enough from me. Enough table setting. I want to dig into all of this stuff with you guys, but I guess first, since we can't do a full sort of, get to dig into your backstory conversation, I was wondering if we could still do a bit of a shortened version of the standard working people conversation we have on the show. And if we could go around the table and each of you could, just introduce yourselves a little bit more to our listeners, or reintroduce yourself to our listeners, and tell us specifically, how you came to work at UPS, what kind of work you do there, and what that work looks like, and why you've stayed at UPS for all this time.
Long, convoluted backstory around how I ended up at UPS, which was not intentional at any point. But as Max already mentioned, I was in the military. After I got out, I went back to school. I ended up supporting veterans at a university that shall not be named. If you're actually curious about it, you can Google me and find out more about how I epically got fired after standing up for students and workers' rights, ACAB, all of that, and took a little bit of a break. And as I was starting to run out of funds, the pandemic was starting and my middle brother was dying. So I came back to Minnesota. And with all of that going on, I ended up making the decision to move back here permanently, and kind of was not really so much job hopping, but being just dissatisfied with a lot of the options. Temporarily was back in restaurants, left that for reasons. And then I really wanted to get into the construction field, and I had the opportunity to go through this class. It was really great. So this was like 2022, last summer. I was getting a lot of help from one of the local unions, to get into a construction job, and was told, hey, go apply at this place. Well, I get there and I'm filling out my application, which is the exact same as the resume that they already had, by the way, except for one little thing. They wanted to know what community and volunteer work I did. And I hesitated, because I know that saying I'm on the board of an anti-war organization, that I do mutual aid, that I support Indigenous resistance, does not bode well. But one of the things that I am known for is always being honest about who I am and never covering up any of that. Needless to say, I did not get that job, and suddenly the union rep has no time for me as far as, trying to help me find a job. So I ended up in a couple of non-union places. The first one, I quit the very first morning during training. because the trainer was just so excited to talk about diversity. But their diversity was that they had hired somebody with a swastika tattooed on his forehead in the past, and they were able to keep him 5 months before he said something inappropriate. There was a lot going on there. I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
so then
listeners can't see our faces right now, but you can feel them.
You can probably figure out what our faces look like. So then I got another job at another non-union place, and it was okay. I knew I couldn't stay there. There was a lot of isms and phobias going on right from the beginning, but I was like, let me get the experience. Let me just keep trying to get in somewhere. Well, I once again made the mistake, not the mistake, of bringing up, hey, what are the like training expectations for me? When can I expect to, learn things related to my job that are not just assigning me and the other woman in the department to go clean up after y'all all the time? Because it's not like I come in with zero experience. I have a lot of experience, just not professional experience. And so it's like, yeah, 5 business days later, all of a sudden there's these made up scenarios about how I don't receive feedback, how I'm a horrible employee, and I'm out of a job again. So take a couple of weeks off, realized it was peak season, right before the holidays, decided to apply at UPS. And one thing I really love about UPS is it is exactly what most labor jobs should be. You fill out an application, they make sure that, you meet the basic requirements, and you essentially show up to start working, because you're either going to decide that you want to be there or not, because it is not an easy job. Like you do, you do a trial interview by going to work. And it's like anything beyond that for a lot of labor jobs, I think, like, what are you doing? Why are you interviewing? Anyways, that's probably a whole nother thing. So I was going to stay there through peak season. They upped our pay for the market rate adjustment through peak season. I was making really good money. I was exhausted every day. I was cussing up a storm more than I'm used to, which is a lot. But I was finding that I was starting to enjoy the work. And even though I started to look other places for either administrative jobs or back in construction, like when I did the math, when I did the time, when I did the compensation, as long as UPS was still paying this market rate adjustment, it made more sense for me to stay there. So when I was offered a permanent position in the middle of January of 2023, I absolutely stayed on. Plus, like, everybody loves me because I am a perfectionist. My trucks are neat all the time. I show up, 99% of the time on time. I help out everybody. I'm a how did I start saying it? I'm a good worker. I'm a bad employee because I know my rights. I know everything that's going on. And I've stayed there because it's given me a lot of flexibility. I've had some of the military related issues that I've been working through, that like preloading, because I could come home and nap afterwards before going on to something else. Like it just worked out really well for me. And there's been like this weird healing aspect as well, because I'm so used to, even now, I've been out of the military longer than I was in at this point in my life, but I still held on to, I can't ever let myself be seen as weak. I can never ask a man for help. Now, like, because the guys are so chill about it. I'll just turn to one of the younger ones, or I'll just turn to somebody I know like is super strong, and I'll be like, dude, I'm tired. And they will come and they will move the heavy ass box for me, and they will just turn on and go about their way. Not once have I ever been like treated like shit because I need help at the end of a shift. They know that I'm older, and they know that I am not as strong as them. That is just a thing. And like, if you can tell from my personality right now needs a union behind me, because I speak up about everything, whether it is, just like the way assignments have been doled out for the day, whether it's about seeing somebody be disrespected by, a supervisor or another person on the line. And to be honest, my supervisor has at least one strike against him for being borderline inappropriate, which is how he ended up being on our line. And I wasn't going to allow that to happen. I'm like, I don't know what they're doing putting him over here. I was new, so they didn't know better at the time. But every single day, not as much anymore, thankfully, because he's starting to chill out. But every single day, there was an ism or a phobia that had to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. And in the past, I'm used to losing my job because of that. Now I know that the union's got my back because we, need to be a zero tolerance workplace. We want to lift people up, and we want everyone to feel valued and respected when they are at work. And I'm going to wrap that up by saying we feel valued and respected with our market rate adjustment. I think a lot of us do. The pay that we're getting right now. The fact that UPS thinks that they can just drop it back down to this like literal poverty wage and maintain workers and have the same, output that's going on right now. Like, I've gone and done local sort in the evening. So I normally work in the mornings. It's pretty comfortable. It gets a little hot and humid in there. But I've gone and worked local sort the past few weeks in the evenings, and I'm getting paid time and a half. And I'm like, there are things right now on local sort that I don't want to do for time and a half, just because it is wretched, sweaty, heavy labor. Check.
I was actually originally I came to UPS because of the Earn and Learn program, which is where they will contribute money to your college education. And I had gone post-secondary, and as most of you probably know, college education is not cheap. And I was looking at going to med school, and that is really not cheap. So I figured I could do my generals through UPS, and I started working there. I was waitressing part-time and going to college. And I did that for a few years, and then the opportunity to go full-time came up, and I would be making a better wage, working full-time hours. And I realized that, the dream of going to medical school was maybe out of my reach. So I went full-time at UPS, and it was, and I started in 1999, so I've been there for a very long time. I'm a proud union member. I'm the union steward out of my facility, and honestly, it's one of the most, I'm trying to get the word here I'm looking for, but it is probably one of the most meaningful things I've ever done in my life. I could not express more, like being able to help people and educating people about what their rights are and being involved in the union. I wish more people would stand up and do the same. I don't think you realize how enlightening it really is, how powerful you really feel. But that's how I ended up full-time, and I stay there because of the health insurance, because I do make good money. I'm a single female. I have my own house. Well, I'm engaged now, but I have my own house. I live alone. I can pay my own bills, and I don't have to rely on anybody else to do that. And that is kind of important for me.
Yeah. I think.
Well, it's important for everybody, I realize. Blanket statement.
No, but it really puts into stark relief like how few of us get that, right? And like to the point that we start just believing that we're not worthy of it. And it's like, no, you deserve to keep a roof over your head. You deserve to like have a living wage to be able to provide for yourself. And, if you got a family, to do that as well. Like, we deserve so much more than what most workers in this economy get. As I can already hear from you both, as I've heard from other UPSers like yourselves, that's why being part of the union is so important. That's what, it really teaches you, especially if you've never had that experience, about the difference that it makes when you are part of that union, when you know your rights on the workplace, when you have each other's backs. I'm comparing what I've heard from folks at union warehouses to the work that I did as a temp at a non-union warehouse. And like, it's just night and day. I mean, like every day we would go in kind of expecting that it was a 50-50 chance we wouldn't come back tomorrow, right? They would work us to the bone for 12, 13, 14 hours, and then we'd be sitting there or standing there on the floor dripping in sweat at the end of a day at a hot box warehouse in Southern California, and the managers would walk down the line and point to the people they wanted to come back the next day. And that's why they stocked like over 80% of their warehouse with temps, because they could pay us, we could get paid a lot less. We could be fired at the drop of a hat, didn't have to deal with any pesky things like unions or union workers who, believe that they deserve dignity on the job. It's such an important aspect to everything that I think working people go through on a day-to-day basis in this country and beyond, to sort of understand like why we should expect to be able to provide for ourselves and to live, to be paid a living wage, and to settle for nothing less.
This is not a foreign concept. I mean, you look at, one of my favorite comments about, especially from my fellow coworkers, is about how this generation is so lazy. And I call bullshit. So this generation, they grew up with their parents struggling. Both parents had work, if they had both parents. They sacrificed, working 8 to 12 to 15-hour shifts just to support a family. If they got to spend any time with their family at all, these kids didn't grow up with the kind of family that the generation before grew up with, where one parent could work, the other parent could stay home and raise a family, and they had dinner together, they spent time together. These kids did not have that. And they're not willing to sell their souls to a corporation to live like their parents did, and with the hope that someday maybe they could retire with dignity, with what's left of their bodies. But this is not a foreign concept. This was what our country was built off. The backs of laborers, the working class. This is not a foreign concept.
Well, and like, I wanted to ask Rikki if you could say a little more about like what your week to week looks like, both as a worker, but as a steward. Like, I mean, like, what do you hear from your fellow workers? Like, what are, I suppose, the responsibilities that a steward in your position deals with? What sorts of concerns are you hearing from your members? And I guess, how does that play into the current contract fight?
Probably one of my biggest is supervisors working. We have a policy where if supervisors can work, but they have to exhaust all union options. We have a list that they are supposed to call down. Everybody who wants to double can sign up for it. They are supposed to call everybody on that list in before they are allowed to work. And it's not something that gets followed regularly. So we have problems with grievances for supervisors who work. Harassment, unfortunately, it should not be an issue in any workplace, but we are no exception. I do get calls a lot. People wanting to talk to, I've noticed this as a post-pandemic thing. I've had a lot of coworkers that I think are dealing with a lot of anxiety coming from the pandemic. We had a lot of people who went through tough times. Like we were working a lot of hours, not seeing our families, going through relationship problems, going through mental health problems. So I get a lot of phone calls about FMLA and how to get that underway. The kind of one of the underlying things we keep saying about being a union steward is a lot of what we have to do is, not only we are the steward, but we're kind of a therapist. We're a therapist, we're a lawyer, we're a lot of things. There's a lot of hats that we have to wear. And it probably, on a regular basis, I can honestly say I have to deal with that at least once a night. So if I'm not there, I get phone calls. All hours a day. You are always on call as a union steward.
Well, and this is something that we've talked about a bit on the show before, but it really, really bears repeating, right? The work that stewards like yourself do, and members, like Amber do, like active members, people who really believe in the union, believe in their members, and who really understand that ultimately what a union means is workers having each other's back at work, right? And what that means to have one another's back and to show up for each other. Like, that's just such unsung and such necessary work. And I just like really, really wanted to just shout that out, right? Because what you do on a week to week basis matters a whole hell of a lot. Like I interview the kinds of members who, you know, would be nowhere if they didn't have someone to answer that phone at night when they're going through a crisis or when they're, you know, experiencing something horrific at work and don't know who else to turn to. So like just wanted to lift that up and thank you for that work that you do. And really just encourage folks out there, you know, to do that work themselves and to support those who are doing it. And, you know, as we say all the time, like, you know, not every union's perfect, not every local's perfect. If you're not getting the kind of support that you need, then be part of the change, you know, like work with your coworkers to make the union what you need it to be, because that is ultimately what needs to happen. And I want to kind of turn that into a question about the current contract fight, right? Because you guys are you know, in, like as I said in the intro, you are in the midst of a very intense period that has been, you know, kind of simmering and boiling for, you know, basically the past year, if not since the past contract. You know, I know a lot of the anger and frustration has been rightfully simmering since the last time, you know, we had a contract negotiation. So I wanted to sort of ask, like, before we kind of talk about where things stand now and what folks should be looking ahead to for the rest of the month, I wanted to ask if, like, we could talk a bit about the current contract fight as you both have sort of experienced it over the past months or the past year. Like, I guess, like, have you felt the kind of, you know, Sean O'Brien energy on the shop floor? Like, are you, I guess, like, how have you and your coworkers been talking about the contract? What do you think, like, listeners need to know about, like, what the real central issues are and maybe, like, what they're not necessarily hearing about in mainstream media coverage?
You know, as far as the energy, I think, you know, especially with this last, you know, little kind of kerfuffle, we'll call it, where they, you know, everybody walked away from the table, or whoever walked away from the table, doesn't matter. But I think this has kind of re-energized a lot of people at work. You know, for the most part, everybody's been following it. You know, it's great that we're using more social media. We have an app now to follow. So the membership now is more involved than they were in previous contract negotiations. But it's, you know, I don't think it really started to maybe hit until this last, you know, the week of 4th of July. And I think people are really starting to realize, oh, no, you know what, this is a real thing. This is going to happen. You know, we've been preparing for it, but we've kind of all, I think, you know, in the back of your mind, you want to hope for the best, but, you know, plan for the worst.
Agree.
Yeah. And we actually, part of our app is a calculator on how to save money for the strike. So they weren't messing around. Like, be prepared. And it's, you know, I think you're definitely feeling the energy. I'm honestly kind of surprised at how many people that I work with. You know, we have like an older crowd there. I've been there for a long time, but I have people who've been there for 30, 40 years, and they're getting kind of like, you know what, screw this. Let's strike. If this is where, you know, UPS is going to take us, then I'm ready. You know, and it's building. You're definitely feeling more energy in these past couple of weeks than we have for the rest of the negotiations.
And is that, like, is it kind of just a general, like, screw this, like the company's like disrespecting us, or is it because it's been kind of a back and forth? Like, I think the news over the past 2 weeks that the tier system was going to be eliminated, like that was kind of a bombshell, not just for this current contract fight, but I mean, so many of the strikes that we've seen in recent years, so many of the labor disputes that I cover on the show week to week, a lot of them center around 2-tier, 3-tier, 4-tier sort of employment systems, equal pay for equal work. You know, this is an issue from, you know, GM plants to John Deere plants to UPS warehouses to higher education, where you've got tenured professors non-tenured, adjuncts, all that kind of stuff. So it's a real big issue. And so I guess I just wanted to sort of ask really quickly, Rikki, if there are any like particular things that people are sinking into, or if it's kind of just a general things are going in the wrong direction and this is our chance to fight.
It's a general, I think there's a lot of pent-up frustrations from our workplace anyway, just because there have been some hostilities in the workplace over this past year, just because it's, the contract negotiations. So management's a little bit tenser than usual. So it's definitely spilling out into the workplace. So I think there's kind of just this general, we're tired of being treated this way. Like we deserve more. And especially I probably sound like a broken record because I know I've said this before. I cannot express enough like what we went through during the pandemic. And I realize it's not over, but during the height of the pandemic, we were working, 6 days a week. We worked every holiday with the exception of Labor Day. We were working, 50 to 60-hour days. We were exhausted. We were exhausted, and UPS made record profits off of that. And yeah, don't get me wrong, we were all very grateful to be employed, but a lot of people and their families suffered, their marriages suffered. Not only that, we put our health on the line. We put the health of our families on the line to keep UPS afloat.
And there was no market rate adjustment during the beginning of the pandemic. So they were still getting paid those fucking poverty wages that Hoffa Jr. agreed to.
Like we lost coworkers during that period of time. Like for them to not take this into consideration no wonder people are so pissed off. Like some people where we work with sacrificed everything, and this is what you can. Like, this is all you can do for us. Well, I can say that. Fuck you. It's an insult. It's like being slapped in the face after you have. Put your family through hell. Sorry, here's some chump change. Thanks for your effort.
Yeah, man. Just the disdain, the callousness that employers revealed during COVID. It's like, I don't know, that's it really does something to you. Again, I have a book of interviews with workers that I recorded during the first year of COVID. And I guess like every episode of this show for the past 3 years has technically been a COVID related episode. And I think you can really hear in people's voices, even if they don't say it explicitly, that like it does something to you to hear from your employer that they don't care if you live or die. Like that I think in the back of our minds before COVID, we all kind of knew it, but we suppressed that. We try to kind of tell ourselves that, maybe that's not the case. But then like COVID really forced the government and employers to like put their cards on the table. It's like, how much do you value human life? And we got our answer in a lot of respects. And I think that, it really changes your relationship to your job. It makes you sit and think about if I die tomorrow and the old adage, like, when it's all said and done, the only people who are going to remember you stayed late to work are your kids, right? Just all those sacrifices that we make for employers who literally could not care less if we like disappeared tomorrow. I think hell yeah, that's really infused a lot of the kind of labor militancy that we're seeing in recent years, and absolutely should, and workers should assert our humanity and our dignity and not be willing to compromise that and not accept, subhuman treatment from our employers or subhuman wages. And I wanted to just kind of ask one more question on that, Rikki. I apologize for sticking on you for so long, but Amber, that we're going to toss to you in a sec. But I wanted to ask if you could just say a little bit about that market rate adjustment thing, because I feel like that hasn't been talked about as much in media coverage. So I just want to pause on that for a second for anyone listening who is like, wait, what's that? And how does that relate to the current contract fight?
Well, the market rate, originally it started out, we used to actually started out before that as we had a weekly bonus for employees, part-time employees only. If you showed up every day, you got I can't remember what it was. It was like $112 bonus. I'm probably wrong on the numbers there, but they received a bonus for that. And so we started running into problems with that because not everybody was getting it. And since it's not contractual, it's very hard to grieve that. It's very hard to fight for that. And they weren't exactly honest when they hired people, because a lot of people didn't understand that this was temporary. I had a lot of people coming up to me like, you know what, they stopped doing this. Like, well, they have the right to. And that upset a lot of people. A lot of people quit when they dropped that because they were not told that this was not a permanent thing. So the answer to that was the MRA. And of course, it's different in every building and every area. Amber might be able to answer this part. I think we're at $26 an hour right now.
Yeah, and we're at 24, and our facilities are probably only 12 miles apart. Yeah.
Mine's higher than yours.
Yep.
And once again, I think originally ours started out at 28. They dropped it down to 26. Once again, people were not informed of this. It was not, during orientation, this was not explained to people that this is just a temporary wage. We can drop it at any time. And once again, since this is not a contractual thing, we don't have much control over this. If they made an MRA, they would have to extend it for the length of that contract. But since it's not contractual, they can drop it, bring it in, do whatever they want with it. It doesn't matter. We have no control over it.
But what's like kind of wild to hear that UPS has said, we don't have any more money on the table to give you. And by give you, they do mean us, the part-time workers, because almost everything else is settled right now. It is coming down to these wages. They're saying we can't pay you what we've already been paying you for the last 6 months. And also they are forcing drivers into overtime, double time, triple time every single day of the week. So somehow they have money to pay drivers like almost up to like $80, $90, $100 an hour, but they don't have money for the package car loaders, the local sorters, like the people who make the things go from facility to facility, truck to truck. And like, just everyone say hi, BB. And just the fact that like, this is rooted in historical sexism within the industry, because package car drivers and loaders, inside workers used to get paid the same up until 1982. I remember that because that's the year that I was born. And so at that point, they started getting different wages. I'm going to finish this up and then I'm going to put the dog out. And note, 1982 is when more women were joining the workforce. More women were coming in to start doing labor jobs. And then there's also this like continuous rumor about how we have to wait 9 months to get insurance. Otherwise, women will just come in while they're pregnant to get insurance to have a baby. And I'm like, y'all, let's stop that, okay? Because anybody can come in to get insurance for the length of a pregnancy at that point. But like, it is rooted in sexism, in the fact that of the 340,000 Teamsters that are getting ready, to go on this contract negotiation, an imminent strike, 55% of us are inside workers. And of that 55%, we have an incredibly high non-male, non-white representation. And I'm going to go ahead and say it too, a lot of queer people. So it is rooted in sexism, and it is continuing to affect us 41 years later.
I'm going to add on to that the $5 billion stock buyback, but all of a sudden they have no money.
Well, and this is kind of like the John Deere strike from a year and a half ago, right? Is like John Deere, the workers there, represented by the UAW, like they voted down 2 tentative agreements because John Deere was like, oh, we can't give you more money. It's like, motherfucker, you just had your most profitable year in existence during a pandemic. Like, what do you mean you don't have money? You guys made billions of dollars. And UPS, like, yeah, you both already said it. Like during COVID, just like Amazon, like e-commerce exploded because we were all, like trying to socially distance. A lot more people were ordering stuff to their homes. How do you guys think all of that was getting to your door, right? It was because of people like Amber and Rikki, right? And that was just a boon to UPS's business model. And now here they are after raking in record profits saying like, oh, we don't have enough money to, pay these part-timers what they're worth or yada, yada, yada. Instead, what they're doing is they're going on these little PR campaigns, and they're there was one last week that was really interesting to me, where after contract negotiations kind of fell apart, immediately you started seeing UPS's main social media accounts share these weird like videos about how happy their part-timers are and just how great of a place UPS is to work if you want to work part-time. And I'm like, that seemed like, I'm not going to say there aren't any happy part-timers, right? Or that like any worker is unhappy all of the time. We're complex human beings. A lot of us love what we do. We love our coworkers, but we don't love getting treated like shit. We don't love, getting shit from our managers, and we would like to get paid what we're worth. So it just seemed like very interesting timing that UPS was rolling out this kind of like, the human shield of part-timers, who love their job to sort of like make them seem kinder in the public eye. But like, Amber, I wanted to ask like what you thought of that little PR campaign, and also like what it's been like for you kind of 9 months kind of jumping into UPS like in the midst of all of this as, like you said, a worker in the warehouse whom we don't normally hear from all that often.
So just a reminder, my background is in women's and gender studies. Obviously, with the military, I've done a lot of focus on race, class, sexuality, gender, all of that. And it's kind of astounding to me. I finally watched the Instagram video. And like, I have questions about if that individual knew what the video was going to be used for, because she's not really talking about it specifically. She's saying, I was in this really shitty situation and now I have stability, which UPS can offer, but like, it just seemed a little bit different than the one that caused me to like scream and screenshot and message Rikki immediately with capital letters, the fucking audacity, which was when you log into our employee web portal, it immediately pops up at the top of the page, how a part-timer supports his family at UPS. That's the headline. When you click through, the very first thing is, oh, he's a full-time real estate agent. He just didn't have insurance. So between a sick child and a sick spouse, they were racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's back up a little bit. Why do we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical debt in the United States? Back up to the public campaign. Why are people homeless in the United States? Because of greedy corporations, because of, generational trauma, both micro and macro levels, that people refuse to deal with in the United States. And so like, they're building this campaign off of issues that shouldn't even exist in the first place. Okay, so you asked how it's been jumping into UPS. It was a steep learning curve. It really was. And again, like, I had not intended to stay there permanently. So the first 30 days, it was just keep my mouth shut, don't get fired. And then I was like, oh crap, I'm actually going to stay here. I have to start learning everything. I love my older friends, because one of my older friends, he was immediately like, you're going to join Teamsters for a Democratic Union. I campaigned for them in the 70s. And I was like, absolutely. If you're telling me that I'm going to need to be part of that group, that's what I'm going to do. I enthusiastically signed my union membership paper at orientation, but then I had to learn the lay of the land, basically, which is that we, specifically part-timers, a lot of people feel neglected, forgotten. There is a lot of turnover. We have like a good significant number of people that have been there for several years, but I would say half of the shift was turning over a lot, especially before the MRA was extended to April and then was just kind of indefinitely extended because they knew what was going to happen if they cut it. And so we've actually had a lot of stability the last few months, and just I like to sit back and watch and learn and try to figure out relationships and patterns and everything that's going on, which is very frustrating for me sometimes. And so learning the history about, the contract fight 5 years ago, hearing about, what Rikki said is just how overworked and unappreciated. Like literally, I think our business agent said 5 people within our local died from COVID directly. And I don't think that even counts affected family members or friends, anything beyond that. And it's really tough to hear that and then to still kind of experience a lot of apathy going on because there's just not enough. There's not enough business agents, there's not enough stewards, there's not enough knowledge out there. As part-timers, we're all coming in for a shift, but like I come in an hour before everybody else to do some work. Some people are finishing up in their sections at all these different times. So it's really difficult to kind of build cohesion around like, hey, let's do this. And I know like TDU keeps putting out like do parking lot meetings, do this, do that. And it's like there's still difficulty like getting because we have people like going straight to second jobs, going home to take care of the kids. Like people do part-time work for very valid reasons. And and that's something like I was so excited the day that I got people to stay for voting on the strike authorization. Like I was just jumping up and down, wanting to hug all of them. I think I ended up with like I got 3 people to stay and I got 4 people to commit to go into the union hall. And I know they did. Like I know they did. But I'm going to kind of wrap this up in that on our line, we just have an interesting group of folks on our line. And so we are always talking about the contract. We are always like, making sure that the new people know what is in the contract around grievances, the supervisors working, what it means to be on time, all of those different things. Like we don't let anyone drop through. We kind of fight as a team against the isms and phobias that I mentioned earlier. And we really support each other through the day and help out. And the other day, when did the contracts break down? The 5th, the morning of the 5th. And so I happened to be on break and I was laying on the belt, the stopped belt. It was not moving, stretching out my back. UPS doesn't care about safety, but you will definitely get yelled at and written up if you step on a moving belt. And so I like logged into social media and I think the local had shared it. And one of my friends that works at one of the North Carolina facilities had shared the Teamsters post, from like 2 hours earlier. And I just screamed and I jumped up and I'm like, and people are coming back to the line and I'm like, told everybody on the line real quick and they all knew what I was talking about. So I was like, okay. And I looked at my watch. I'm like, I've got 3 minutes before break is over. So I just start running around the facility, like stopping. And I'm like trying to identify, okay, at least one person from each work section, like, okay, I can tell this person. And it started off as like, the first person was like, oh, crap, just kind of like you could see on their face that they were feeling the financial hit right away. And then like I ran to the next line and I've talked to those folks a lot before. So they were like, okay, what does this mean? And so I went through like a 30-second spiel of this is what I think is going to be next. And, I'll get back with more information. Then I go to the last line and immediately the person responds with, yeah, we absolutely need to get paid more. Do you know how hard this shit is? And then break was over and I had to go back to my line. But like generally, I feel everybody felt the same that Rikki mentioned earlier, that the contract negotiations seem to be going so positively and like really getting a lot of wins, especially in the non-economic areas, that I was like, okay, strike is maybe going to happen, but maybe they'll actually just give in, especially since they've already been paying most of us well above the contract rate for the last several months. But to see that is when I knew it was like, oh crap, and that shook people up. And there's a lot of follow up to do, because even some people were the last guy I talked to, he was like, well, are there any like non-union folks in our shift? I'm like, I honestly don't know, but I do feel like there is a few. And he's like, why would anybody not be part of the union? And I'm like, let's have a history lesson next week.
What I would give to have a camera in that warehouse and like just a reality show.
Oh, there's a camera. We just don't have access to it.
All right, yeah, not the creepy Orwellian cameras that UPS has everywhere. But like if we could turn Amber and Rikki's like days on the floor into a reality show, I would watch the shit out of that. Sorry, Rikki, what were you about to say?
I was going to add on to the part about the people not really knowing, and this is I'm trying to push this through our local right now. Obviously, this is coming after, hopefully, everything, the contract is ratified, but trying to do like kind of contract literacy classes for people. Everybody should know what the contract means. It shouldn't just be the stewards; it should be everybody. Zoom meetings, whatever. But anybody who wants to attend, they need to understand what the contract means for them.
I love it.
Yeah, I emailed our president about it, and he seemed really like enthusiastic about it. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's super important, and I want us to sort of like kind of pick up on that in a second. And I can't keep you both for much longer. I know that you got busy days, and I got to let you go soon. So we are going to finish with sort of like, okay, looking ahead. Anyone who's listening to this, like if they're a member, what do they need to know? If they're folks who want to stand in solidarity with y'all, what should we be looking out for, and how can we do that? How can we show support for y'all? So we're going to end there in a second. But you both like have brought up, an important topic, and if you're comfortable with it, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this really quick, because we're talking about the labor movement here. We're talking about the Teamsters. We're talking about work that is traditionally identified with this sort of archetype of the, blue collar dude, right? This is a very male dominated industry in a union that has such a macho drenched reputation, right? And, I think like there are parts of that people get excited about, I get the allure. Yeah, Teamsters are badass. Like there's something about, that kind of old archetypal image that is attractive to people for different reasons. But at the same time, I feel like even amongst more progressive leaning folks who I know are deeply supportive of y'all, I think it's easy for people to sort of unquestioningly sort of like, indulge in the hyper masculine like theatrics of the union fight with UPS, and even like that leads us to sort of maybe not fully see like what this diverse workforce of around 350,000 people go through on a day-to-day basis. So I guess what I'm asking is, like, as two women working at UPS, part of the union, very active in the union, I guess, like, has that sort of tracked for you as like the coverage of this contract fight has been mounting? I just feel like I personally hear from very few women, and I fear, like, let alone from part-timers, folks we tend to hear from folks in the package cars. Even now with the sort of like contract negotiations, falling apart, there's a lot of like kind of chest beating to the whole thing. I guess I just sort of wanted to get your sort of take on that, and like if you feel like we are collectively missing an important part of the picture here.
think this is probably one of Amber and I's favorite subjects, actually. It's true. Like, let's be honest. Like the Teamsters do have a reputation of being a bunch of old white guys. That's not a secret. I'm excited about this new leadership. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of bigger changes. I think we're going to see a lot more women. We're going to see a lot of people from different cultural backgrounds. Like it's going to expand, because it has to be able to. If you're going to represent the workforce, you have to look like the workforce. People's voices need to be heard, and I think we're going to see more of that with this leadership.
I agree with Rikki on that. I especially am already seeing it in our local joint council. Is that the appropriate term? Kind of driven by our local union that we're part of, in that we had a table at Pride for the first time. And that I asked for the local bylaws, and the very first thing I saw was he, him, and brothers all throughout it. So before I even read it, I responded to our local president and was like, so I see one thing that needs a change in there. And he responded affirmatively, and like he's all for understanding that a lot of things have just continuously been dropped as not a priority. But why would you not prioritize something like that? Technically the bylaws don't apply to me at all because I'm not referenced in them. And so at the local level, I feel good. I don't know how I feel about the international level right now, just because there is so much media and there are so many people talking that do not seem to fully represent what I see as our workforce here in, southern Twin Cities areas where I'm at. And it's also interesting to me that I know we had briefly talked about, what we would like to see in the future. In addition to some of that, I would really love to see the union fight for language justice in the work centers, because right now UPS claims to have some requirement to speak and fully understand English. And I'm sorry, if you know anything about the Twin Cities, one of your best workforces, especially the ones who are reliable for, showing up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning and being sober, English is not going to be their primary language. And so the Department of Labor has already said, or NLRB, whoever actually has it written out, that all training and feedback should be provided in the language that the person understands best. And it's that simple. And so, I saw the struggle during peak when we had a lot of part-timers, seasonal come on. I have seen the struggle recently in the local sort in the evening, where it's like, this person is highly capable. They're motivated. They're here. They're figuring it out. They could do better if they were being trained in their primary language and not like these complicated, and I'm sorry, we Midwesterners have weird ass accents sometimes too. And it like makes things weird. And so there's just so much that could be done to make our workforce stronger. And I do have hope for it. I really do. Just learning about, the recent history of UPS, seeing it within our local, knowing that other people like Rikki, I forced Rikki to be my friend right off the bat, right when I met her. I'm like, we're gonna be friends. Because I needed to know that somebody similar to me existed at another facility. That's what it was. And I know that there's a lot of us.
We're seeing it once again at a local level where, our locals are working with other workers' rights groups and other community centers and helping people, like the Somalian community. We work with the Ada Woods Center where, we have a partnership with them. We have, I'm trying to establish one with some other workers' rights groups. We're branching out and getting to know our community, which is what we need to be doing across the country.
Yeah, I mean, like we like you're talking about Twin Cities here. I mean, some of the most exciting, labor action is going on there, and you have like this incredible diverse workforce. I mean, like we just had Kali Jama on the show, who was one of the Amazon warehouse workers, Somali American, really kind of achieving this historic win with the new warehouse bill that is going to go into effect this year, and like that was one of their big concerns too, right? It's like you got like so many hardworking folks speaking different languages. Like if you're not kind of acknowledging that this is the reality of your workforce and not making materials and training available in the languages of your workers, then like what the hell are we doing here? And like I guess that's actually a nice way to sort of segue to the final turn here, because like I said, I know I got to let you both go, but I want to sort of like talk about like looking ahead. Again, we're going to post updates for folks on social media. We're going to keep coverage going over at the Real News Network. But as far as the podcast concerned, we're recording this on July 10th. It's going to come out next week. So we're going to have about a week and a half, leading up to the contract expiring after this episode comes out. So I just sort of wanted to ask you both, like how does that warehouse worker protection bill, like, is that going to like impact you guys over there in the coming years? But also like for folks who have their eyes focused on the strike, what can you tell us about like what you're, I suppose, expecting, what sort of scenarios could play out between the UPS and Teamsters if they do hammer out a tentative agreement, if they return to the table and kind of work out a deal before the end of the month, or if they don't, how are you guys preparing? And what should UPSers around the country be prepared for, and also like folks who are out there standing in solidarity with y'all, what can we do to support our fellow workers over at UPS?
So I've heard that some companies are promising or sending out emails that they're not going to switch carriers, that they're sticking with UPS, that they support the strike. I don't know if that applies to those meal plan companies. And I'm just asking myself, this is not representative of the union's opinion. Please cancel your meal plans, because we don't want to come back to them in the warehouses after 5, 6, 7 days, 2 weeks and deal with them. And that
after sitting in the August heat.
Yeah, well, okay, they are never temperature controlled. No matter what you think, they are never temperature controlled, and I get a little weirded out about some of them. But like, be aware of. I don't know how much. I think a lot of it is propaganda, but there may be a couple companies shifting over to FedEx or some other shipper. Just be aware of it. Like if your shipper all of a sudden changes for something, please write to them and tell them, no, I'm canceling now because you're not sticking with UPS. You're not sticking with workers. UPS will tell you, oh, FedEx will absorb this. FedEx can't absorb 20 million packages overnight. We ship a significant number of United States Postal Service packages every day under a specific part of our contract. Even it is in the contract what we can ship and what we can't. And just to like earlier, you're talking about support. Like one of the most enthusiastic supporters that I've had, like just come in contact with, is an elderly woman with a almost 50-year-old adult child with Down syndrome. And this is from my small hometown, and I don't always expect to receive positive support out there. But she was just so enthusiastic. She's like, UPS was like my life-saving line during the pandemic so that we could stay safe, so that my daughter could stay safe, and did all these other things. Like, you all do absolutely whatever the heck it is you need to do. And I want people to continue to remember that as we go forward, and like join folks out on the picket lines, please cancel those meal plans. I know which companies they are. um, and just be prepared. Just be okay with being inconvenienced for a couple of weeks, so that we can all win. Because like when we win this labor contract, when we get what we need and want, it is just going to be so much momentum for the labor force overall in the United States and beyond. Check.
I just want to say about the Kali, I love her. Like, seriously, she is an amazing human being. I've met her multiple times. I've been to protests with her. I will say this: Amazon exploits young, single parents, people new to this country. They assume that they A, don't know their rights, and B, too scared to stand up for their rights. And Amazon here in Twin Cities, when Amazon is Shakopee, is learning the lesson that is not the case. Amazing. Working with the Wood Center is just amazing. As far as the warehouse worker bill, probably it was, I mean, a lot of it really does affect Amazon more than us. I'm kind of going to get off on a tangent here with the Amazon thing, but they had a thing called time on task. Basically, they had a quota they had to meet every day, but Amazon was not required to tell them what that quota was. So at the end of the day, they would tell you whether or not you made it. And you can't see it, so you don't know if they're pulling numbers out of their ass. You don't know where is this coming from? And they can use it as a reason to get rid of you. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but they have 150% turnover rate, which is obscene. So they were abusing that, and that is part of the warehouse worker bill. You have to be told what is expected of you every day. Another part of it is for injuries, and this could apply to us. If you have a higher than average percentage of rate of injuries in your area, or in your building, I guess I should say, OSHA can come in and investigate unprompted, which is excellent, because otherwise you have to make calls. They can come in unprompted. Which is another problem. I think you're 2/3 more likely to get injured in an Amazon warehouse in Minnesota than you are any other warehouse. And it was actually really amazing to work with. We had a celebration party just a few weeks back with the Wood Center, and we had Emma Greenman there and Erin Murphy, the senator and representative that helped push the bills through. Amazing woman. And it was, and we're all very excited about it. And you hear some of these stories, and it's heart-wrenching just how people get treated. And UPS and Amazon are not too different in that front. They've made it very clear that we don't really matter to them. We are just numbers. And so hopefully this is, it's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction. Now, as far as supporting us, best thing you could possibly do, organize your own workplace. Start talking to your coworkers. If you work at Amazon, give me a phone call. I work for the organizing committee. Seriously, talk to your coworkers. Learn your labor laws. What rights do you have? If you're going to talk to the boss, it's considered protected activity. Look it up. You know what? Talk to members of labor unions. They said, learn your rights. If you want to support us, organize your own work area. Support the workers' rights movement.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.